Hey y'all, and welcome back to Thinking and Drinking. This week I'll be talking about self-sufficiency, aka the life-changing magic of saving money and avoiding people by learning how to do things for yourself. So kick back, relax, pour yourself a beverage, and let's get to it. Remember back in April or so when you couldn't find flour, yeast, baking powder, or anything like that at the store to save your life because it seemed like everyone was making sourdough bread at home? How many of you rolled your eyes at the seeming flood of artisanal bread loaves taking over Instagram and grumbled something about hipster bullshit? I'll confess I might have done that when I had to pay over $25 to get 10 pounds of flour shipped to me by Amazon. Then again, that was towards the end of my second year of grad school when I barely had money to get groceries, and I had to play a little game I called Broke-Ass Iron Chef in order to make sure that I had food on the table. Come to think of it, some of my best kitchen innovations have come from being broke and having to forage in my pantry for inspiration like a raccoon in a suburban garbage can. But I digress. I was annoyed at this shortage of baking staples, and I was amazed at people who think that making bread is this kind of arcane skill that you have to be a 5th level culinary sorcerer in order to master. Then I checked myself, and I remembered a few things. One, I grew up with family in the food service industry, so I've seen behind the metaphorical curtain in a way that not many people have. 2, if you don't care about quality or out-of-the-oven freshness, you can get a decent loaf of bread for a few dollars. Less than that. 3, it's a matter of convenience. Not everyone has the time, the patience, or the surplus cash to invest in making a fancy-ass loaf of bread. One thing that the pandemic has brought to light, at least for me, is that America has grown into a culture of dependence on being able to get things as soon as possible. Toilet paper, groceries, even online shopping. Hell, I spent about $40 on Amazon a couple of weeks ago just so that I could have some shampoo that won't irritate my scalp delivered to my doorstep at 8 a.m. the next morning. And speaking of hair, what the hell about those people who violated stay-at-home orders just so they could get a damn haircut at a salon? In the age of YouTube tutorials, it blows my damn mind that people aren't willing to do that crap for themselves. Some people cite vanity as a reason for not wanting to cut their own hair, and to that I say, hun, you shouldn't even be leaving your house anyway unless you absolutely have to, so get the fuck over yourself. Now, of course, I shouldn't be so cavalier, considering that other than the occasional trip to the salon for a touch-up, I've been cutting my own hair for the past 5 years. So I kind of have the practice in doing it. Again, this stemmed from being broke. I was working overnights at Walmart for dismal wages back in 2015, and I kind of had to figure out haircuts for myself. One advantage to that situation, though, is that when you're on the graveyard shift at a Walmart supercenter, in a part of the U.S. known for its meth addicts and other colorful characters, nobody cares if you look like a gremlin for a little while. Another thing, I was raised to be self-sufficient. With both my parents working full-time jobs in the 90s and early aughts when I was still living at home, I did a fair amount of housework on my own because my parents just didn't have the time. And also because they wanted me to learn how to have the skills to be a fully functional adult. Gender played no role in this, by the way, which is why at one point in my life I was a spindly 13-year-old wielding a gas-powered string trimmer that was longer than I was tall every week when I tidied up the yard. My dad taught me how to change a tire, unclog a toilet, and how to clean out the lint trap on the dryer when I was doing laundry so that shit didn't accidentally catch the house on fire. He also encouraged me to take electives in school that would give me useful, transferable skills for home maintenance, laying the groundwork for the do-it-myself mentality that lasts in me even until today. There are still some home repairs that I won't do, though, for what it's worth. Anything that requires a professional license to do, like home wiring or major plumbing repairs. And central air, other than changing out the filter, nope. But if there is a reasonable chance that I won't get killed while doing it, I'm down for most home fixes. And apparently, as a female-presenting individual, this is just one of many things that makes me intimidating, which I really don't fucking get, but whatever. As I said before, though, gender had nothing to do with the reason for why I learned how to do these things. The real reason was, for what it's worth, is the practical fact that my parents knew that I wouldn't always have someone around to help me. This is one reason why, by the way, that I vibe so hard with the character of Ron Swanson on Parks and Rec. Even though, in terms of personality, I'm more of a Ben Wyatt, kind of like the socially maladjusted nerd type. But yes, I vibe really hard with Ron Swanson, and that's why the title of this episode is Swansonism. Because it's kind of this attitude of being self-sufficient. I wasn't sent off to work at the mill at a young age, but I did learn how to use most household power tools, and some home workshop equipment like saws, lathes, and a drill press by the age of 13. I think there is something satisfying about coming up with an idea for a project, planning it out, and then actually doing the damn thing and succeeding. Whether it's sewing a replica of a 17th century frock coat, crafting a beautiful chessboard out of birch and mahogany, making my own hard cider, which that was an explosive experience, or upgrading my home computer. Knowing how to plan and execute a complex task with skill is something that I take great pride in, especially if it's a new thing that I haven't tried before and that might be useful to me later. Unless, of course, it's something like giving my cats a flea bath, which I had to do this past weekend. Useful knowledge, but highly unpleasant in execution. I think my neighbors thought that I was murdering someone. Yeah. Part of this is, no doubt, probably due to my autism brain. I hoard information like a magpie hoards shiny objects, and being able to put that information together in new and interesting ways is one reason why I did so well in college. It can also lead to unusual dinner table conversations with topics like the ethical and moral underpinnings of Skynet and the Terminator franchise that are guaranteed to get you strange looks from the other diners in a small-town Chinese restaurant. Another part of it, as you have no doubt gathered, is that learning how to do shit myself has, in many cases, saved me money, which is great when you're on a budget like me. You might have a bigger investment up front, like if you're learning how to bake and you need to acquire ingredients in bulk. But the results generally tend to pay for themselves, especially now when going to the grocery store isn't always the best idea. One more perk that I particularly enjoy is that the more I learn to do on my own, the less I have to deal with people. It's not that I fear being taken advantage of, although that certainly is a risk due to my appearance and demeanor. I guess I'm just too nice, which is confusing when I'm told that I'm intimidating. On the other hand, it just really doesn't, add up. Anyway, it's just that, like many autistic folks, I'm not great at, and I generally dislike the small talk that tends to be the currency of many social interactions. I've gotten better at it as part of learning how to pass as a neurotypical person, but I don't enjoy it because it tends to feel, at least to me, like trying to put a jigsaw puzzle together by looking at the back. I also have language processing issues because of my brain injury and because of a few other things, so chit-chat isn't my forte. Also, I have to have notes whenever I'm doing any of these podcasts, so if you see me looking down all the time, or if there are a lot of weird pauses, that's because I have to look at my notes. Fluid speech isn't something that comes to me naturally. I have to work at it. So, one last benefit of learning to do shit for yourself that is good for everyone, not just for autistic people who have problems dealing with neurotypicals. You know what is going into the final project when you put the thing together yourself. I'm not saying this out of paranoia or because I'm tapped into some weird conspiracy theory bullcrap. No. If you learn to cook for yourself, you can make food that's generally healthier, and you can tailor it for various sensitivities and allergens. And when you're building your own computer, you can avoid the bloatware that tends to come installed on pre-manufactured systems. I'm talking about games that you'll never play, and apps that you probably don't need. And, janky-ass antivirus systems that fuck up your system when you try to uninstall them. I'm looking at you, Norton Antivirus, to borrow the phrasing of one gentleman by the name of Ice-T. That program can eat several dicks. The difference between learning to cook and learning to assemble complex electronics, though, is that if you fuck up the cooking, the result is still generally edible. You might not want to eat it, but you probably could if you were desperate. When it comes to computers, one misstep could prove expensive. With cooking, if you follow the recipe closely enough, you can fudge a few things and it'll generally work out. With computers, you need to make sure that you are observing proper precautions against static discharge and the like. Even if you can afford to replace a component, like an expensive graphics card or anything else, if you fry it during assembly, why the hell would you even want to take that risk? You don't have to build your computer in your underwear. Sorry to disappoint any of you who think that I do. You know, something for everyone, I guess. But in the very least, invest in a grounding strap. They cost less than $10, and the minor constraint of using one is better than spending hundreds of dollars or more on replacement components. And for you hot single nerd folk out there, you shouldn't be letting anyone near your delicate parts if they're not using the right PPE. Something else I'd like to bring up, lest it seems like I've got my head wedged too firmly up my ass on this, is that not everyone has the resources to carry out the do-shit-yourself lifestyle. I'm not talking about the bougie Pinterest hacks that look simple but actually cost several $100s and require access to a full woodworking shop. I am talking about cooking and sewing and other household stuff that was common knowledge a few generations ago, but due to societal paradigm shifts and changes in school budgets that cut out home ec classes and shop classes, these things just aren't around anymore. Not everyone will have the money to invest in materials or tools at the outset, especially not when flour can cost upwards of $25 for 10 pounds on Amazon because you can't find it in the store. When it comes to power tools, you generally don't want to skimp on the price, or else you'll wind up with something that won't last. When it comes to intangibles, building the skills to consistently do things yourself takes time that not everyone has either. And come to think of it, it's ironic that things that used to be considered staples of rural, blue-collar, lower-income living have been co-opted as status symbols for the upwardly mobile and the middle-class, white-collar worker. And if you think I'm talking out my ass here, go back on Instagram and look at the demographics of people who are posting their twee craft projects and their quarantine sourdough. Generally speaking, they aren't the essential workers who are pulling shifts at the grocery store so that they can be bitched at for shortages that aren't their fault while being exposed to a virus that could kill them. So, in the end, if you have the resources to start picking up some DIY skills, it's well worth the effort. Projects are a great way of getting yourself out of your head and preventing the anxiety thought spirals that many of us are dealing with, especially now. Just make sure that you do the research first, like go to a reliable source, not just Joe Bob's video tutorials. Try and find a reliable source for the thing that you're trying to do. Like if you are trying to cut your own hair, find a video tutorial from an actual trained licensed hairstylist, Do the research first before diving into something that you're unfamiliar with, and use appropriate safety precautions. Because, hair grows back, but fingers don't. That's all I've got for you today. Come on back next time for a chat about the roots of country music and the time that I was most strongly tempted to write "what the fuck" on one of my students' final paper.